I stared at the divorce papers in my hands, my heart sinking into my stomach. Amanda, my wife of 5 years, wanted everything, including our house that we had saved for together. When I mentioned fighting her in court, she laughed coldly. "You cannot afford a lawyer to fight me, Oakley. Not with what you make." Her words cut deep because they were true. So I simply nodded and replied, "You are right." The look of satisfaction on her face was unbearable. But she had no idea what was coming. When court day arrived and the city's most feared divorce attorney sat beside me, her face drained of color. He looked directly at her and said firmly, "He does not have to afford me. I am his older brother. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how this story unfolds." I met Amanda at Turner Engineering 7 years ago. I was a mid-level engineer with a decent salary, but nothing spectacular. She was the new marketing intern with striking blue eyes and a smile that lit up our drab office. Our departments rarely interacted, but fate stepped in during a company project that forced our teams to collaborate. We started having lunch together in the break room, talking about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. Amanda was ambitious and driven. I was steady and dependable. Somehow we balanced each other perfectly. After 6 months, I finally worked up the courage to ask her on a real date. We went to this little Italian restaurant downtown, where the owner knew my name. She seemed charmed by how the waitstaff treated me like family. 2 years of dating flew by, and we decided to get married. Our wedding was simple but warm, just close friends and family at a small venue by the lake. We saved every penny we could for a down payment on our first house. It was a modest 3-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I can still remember the night we got the keys, how we sat on the empty living room floor, eating takeout pizza and planning our future. Those early years were beautiful. I went to work, focused on my projects, and took pride in being a good husband. Amanda continued her rise at the company, impressing management with her marketing skills and fresh ideas. We were a team supporting each other and planning for a family down the road once we were more established. The first cracks appeared about 3 years into our marriage. Amanda received a significant promotion to senior marketing manager. Her salary suddenly dwarfed mine, and something shifted between us. She started dressing differently, talking differently, even laughing differently. New friends entered her life, executives and their spouses, who lived in much nicer neighborhoods than ours. My career remained stable, but unexciting. I was good at what I did, solved problems efficiently, and my bosses valued my work. But I never sought the spotlight or pushed for rapid advancement. The steady paycheck and reasonable hours suited me just fine. Amanda began making comments, subtle at first, but growing more pointed as time passed. "When are you going to ask about that supervisory role?" she would say while scrolling through her phone at dinner. "Tom just bought Jessica that beautiful house in Oak Hills. They have been married 2 years less than us," she would mention casually, making sure I understood the comparison. Money became a constant source of tension. Our discussions about finances turned into arguments. Amanda wanted to upgrade our home, our cars, our furniture, while I advocated for saving and being content with what we had. The woman who once admired my stability now seemed to resent it. She started coming home later, citing work dinners and networking events. Sometimes I would smell unfamiliar cologne when she hugged me. I pushed away my suspicions, telling myself she worked with many men in her industry. I trusted her. That was my mistake. One Tuesday evening, Amanda left her laptop open on our kitchen counter while she took a shower. A notification popped up from someone named Gregory. I had never heard her mention anyone by that name, which seemed odd since she usually talked about her coworkers. I am not proud of what I did next, but something in my gut pushed me to click on the message. What I saw shattered my world. Intimate messages, plans to meet at a hotel, comments about their future together. Gregory Daniels was the chief executive officer at our company, a married man 20 years our senior. As I scrolled through months of messages, I realized their affair had been going on since shortly after her promotion. When Amanda emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open in front of me. Her face told me everything I needed to know before I said a word. "How long were you planning to keep this going?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite the hurricane inside me. She did not apologize. She did not cry. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and said, "I do not love you anymore, Oakley. I have not for a long time." Those words hurt more than discovering the affair. The thought that while I had been loving her, supporting her, planning our future, she had been falling out of love with me. "I want a divorce," she continued, her voice businesslike. "And I want the house. Half of this house is mine," I reminded her. "We bought it together." That is when she laughed, a cold sound I had never heard from her before. "You cannot afford a lawyer to fight me, Oakley. Not with what you make. Gregory has connections. Daniel West will represent me, and he never loses. Be realistic about this." Her cruelty stunned me. This was not the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I had been too blind to see it. The days following Amanda's revelation were some of the darkest of my life. She moved out temporarily, staying with a friend who I now knew was really Gregory. Our home, once warm with memories, felt hollow and tainted. I wandered from room to room at night, unable to sleep, replaying our years together, and wondering where I had gone wrong. One morning I discovered another blow. Our joint savings account, which had contained nearly $40,000, now held barely $3,000. Amanda had withdrawn the money the day before, telling me about the affair. A premeditated financial attack that left me reeling. I called the bank, but there was nothing they could do. As a joint account holder, she had every legal right to take that money. The official divorce papers arrived via courier a week later. Reading through the legal language made my stomach turn. Amanda was not just asking for the house, she wanted alimony despite earning more than me. She claimed I had emotionally abandoned her and failed to support her career. Lies stacked upon lies, but presented in formal legal terms that made them seem almost credible. As she had promised, the papers listed her attorney as Daniel West of West, Shepherd and Klein. Even I knew that name. West was legendary in divorce proceedings, known for his ruthless approach and astronomical fees. He represented wealthy clients exclusively and had a reputation for leaving the opposing spouse with nothing. Friends I thought I could count on suddenly became scarce. Amanda had always been the social connector in our relationship, more charismatic and outgoing. Most of our friends were really her friends who tolerated me. Now they were taking sides and I was losing. Several couples we used to have dinner with regularly stopped returning my calls. I later learned Amanda had been sharing her version of events, painting me as an unambitious husband who held her back. Sitting alone in my kitchen one night, staring at the divorce papers and a bank account that could not possibly cover a retainer for even a mediocre attorney, I hit rock bottom. Amanda was right. I could not afford to fight her. Not on my salary, not against Daniel West, not without savings. The injustice crushed me. I had been faithful, supportive, and loving, yet I was the one facing financial and emotional ruin. That night, something shifted in my memory. An image of my older brother Alexander surfaced, one I had not thought about in years. Alexander, who used to stand up to neighborhood bullies for me when we were kids. Alexander, who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with math homework. Alexander, who had once promised he would always be there if I needed him. We had drifted apart in adulthood. Alexander went to an Ivy League law school, while I pursued engineering at a state university. He focused relentlessly on his career, working 100-hour weeks at prestigious firms. I chose a more balanced life, prioritizing stability and personal time. Our different paths created distance, compounded by a silent, unacknowledged current of comparison. I sometimes felt inadequate next to his achievements, while he seemed to view my life choices as lacking ambition. Our parents had passed away within a year of each other, shortly after I met Amanda. The funeral services were the last times we had really talked. Even at my wedding, Alexander came alone, gave a polite speech, and left early, citing work commitments. Phone calls became less frequent, then holiday cards. Only then, Nothing but the occasional text message. 5 years of minimal contact, and now I was considering reaching out in my darkest moment. Pride made me hesitate. Vulnerability made me dial. It rang 4 times before he answered. Oakley. His voice sounded surprised. Is everything okay? Not really. I admitted the lump in my throat, making speech difficult. I need help, Alex. There was a pause, and for a terrible moment I thought he might make an excuse. Instead, he said, "Tell me everything." So I did. The promotion, the changes in Amanda, the affair, the divorce, the financial sabotage, everything. Alexander listened without interrupting. When I finished, the line was quiet for so long I checked to see if we had been disconnected. "This Daniel West Alexander," finally said, his voice unnaturally calm. "He is representing her. Yes. Apparently he is some hotshot divorce lawyer who never loses." Alexander made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Is that what she told you?" "You know him?" I asked. "You could say that. We have faced each other in court several times." The implications of that statement slowly dawned on me. "Alex, are you? What kind of law do you practice?" "Exactly. Family law, primarily. High-asset divorce cases, to be specific." His tone shifted to something harder. "What Amanda and Wes do not realize is that the legal community has a nickname for me, the Strict Sullivan. It seems your wife has made a grave miscalculation. For the first time since Amanda's revelation, I felt a flicker of hope. Will you help me?" "Little brother," Alexander said, using a term he had not used since we were teenagers. "I am going to do more than help you. I am going to make sure justice is served, and I am going to enjoy every minute of it." Over the next several weeks, Alexander and I worked together preparing our case. He explained that we needed evidence of Amanda's infidelity, financial misconduct, and false claims. We documented the emptied savings account, collected text messages I had with her, discussing our finances, and gathered witness statements from coworkers who knew about her relationship with Gregory. Alexander also discovered something I never would have found on my own. Amanda had opened a private bank account 6 months earlier and had been diverting part of her salary into it. She had accumulated nearly $100,000 that she had not disclosed in the divorce filing. This was not just morally wrong, Alexander explained, but legally actionable. During this time, Amanda continued her psychological warfare. She sent messages suggesting, "I agree to her terms to make this easy on yourself." When I did not respond, she became more aggressive, warning that I would regret fighting her. Her final text before our court date read, "Representing yourself is a fool's errand, Oakley. Be prepared to lose everything." I did not respond. Alexander advised radio silence, letting her believe her intimidation was working. "Let her walk into court, confident and unprepared," he said. The element of surprise would work in our favor. As we prepared, something unexpected happened. Alexander and I reconnected. Late nights reviewing documents turned into conversations about our lives. I learned about his divorce 3 years prior, a painful experience that had shaped his legal career. He admitted feeling guilty about his success, believing I resented him for it. I confessed my own feelings of inadequacy, always comparing myself to his achievements. Years of misunderstandings began to clear, building a bridge across the chasm that had formed between us. The night before court, Alexander looked at me seriously and said, "No matter what happens tomorrow, I am sorry I let us drift apart. That ends now." The county courthouse was an imposing stone building with wide steps and tall columns. My hands trembled slightly as Alexander and I approached the entrance. He noticed and gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, show no emotion," he reminded me. "Let her think you are defeated until the moment I identify myself to the court." Inside, the polished marble floors and wooden benches gleamed under fluorescent lights. We arrived early, but Alexander waited outside while I entered the courtroom alone. As planned, I sat at the respondent's table with an empty chair beside me, looking appropriately nervous. Amanda arrived 20 minutes later, walking confidently alongside Daniel West. West was exactly as I had imagined, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit with silver hair and predatory eyes. They sat at the opposite table, and I felt Amanda's gaze on me, a mixture of pity and triumph. She leaned over to whisper something to West, and they both smiled. Other divorce cases proceeded before ours, each one brief and businesslike. Finally, the clerk called Sullivan versus Sullivan petition for dissolution of marriage. Amanda and West approached their table. I stood and walked to mine alone. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes named Watson, looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Sullivan, are you representing yourself today?" she asked, her tone, suggesting this was a poor decision. Before I could answer, the courtroom door opened. Alexander walked in dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The effect was immediate. Whispers spread through the gallery. West's smile vanished. Amanda's eyes widened. "Your Honor, Alexander," said his voice, carrying effortlessly. Alexander Sullivan, appearing as counsel for the respondent Oakley Sullivan. Judge Watson's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Sullivan, this is unexpected. You typically do not handle cases in my courtroom. A special circumstance, Your Honor. The respondent is my brother." I will never forget the look on Amanda's face in that moment. The blood drained visibly, leaving her complexion ashen. West recovered more quickly, whispering urgently to her. While shuffling through his documents, Judge Watson nodded. "Very well. Miss Sullivan, Mr. West, are you prepared to proceed?" West stood, attempting to project confidence. "We are, Your Honor." Alexander placed his briefcase on the table and extracted a single folder. "As are we, Your Honor. However, before proceedings begin, I would like to address several significant issues with the petitioner's filings." What followed was a masterclass in legal evisceration. Alexander systematically dismantled every claim in Amanda's petition. He presented evidence of her affair with Gregory, including timestamps that proved she was seeing him during work hours while claiming to be in meetings. He revealed the hidden bank account and submitted bank statements showing the emptied joint savings. He called into question her claims for alimony given her substantially higher income. West attempted to object several times, but Alexander anticipated and countered each objection before Judge Watson could rule. It became increasingly clear that West was outmatched. He had prepared for an easy victory against an unrepresented opponent, not a battle with one of the city's premier divorce attorneys. The breaking point came when Alexander presented a document that made even Judge Watson's professional demeanor crack. "Your Honor, we have evidence that the petitioner conspired with her paramour to create a false performance review of my client at their workplace, attempting to have him terminated to further damage his financial position during these proceedings." West finally found his voice. "Objection. Your Honor, this is an outrageous accusation with no foundation." Alexander smiled thinly. "The foundation is Exhibit D, an email chain between the petitioner and Gregory Daniels, explicitly discussing this plan obtained through legal discovery from their employer, once notified of potential corporate policy violations." Judge Watson reviewed the document, her expression darkening. "Mr. West, Miss Sullivan, I strongly suggest you confer with your client. The court takes a very dim view of this kind of behavior." West and Amanda huddled in whispered, heated conversation. Amanda's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally defeat. When they turned back to the court, West's tone had changed completely. "Your Honor, in light of new information, my client would like to request a brief recess to reassess her position." Judge Watson granted a 30-minute recess. As Amanda rushed past our table toward the exit, I heard her hiss at West. "You said this would be easy. You said he could not afford to fight back." West's response was too low to hear, but his expression told me everything. He was already distancing himself from a losing case. During the recess, Alexander outlined what would likely happen next. "They will offer to settle. The question is whether you want to accept. What would you recommend?" I asked. Alexander's expression softened slightly. "As your attorney, I advise considering a fair settlement that gives you the house and an equitable division of assets." As your brother, I would enjoy taking this all the way and watching them squirm. When court reconvened, West approached with a settlement offer. The terms were everything Alexander had predicted. I would keep the house. Amanda would return, the money taken from our joint savings. All mutual assets would be divided, 50-50, and each party would pay their own legal fees. One addition, Alexander stated firmly. Miss Sullivan will cover all legal fees incurred by my client. Non-negotiable. After another hurried conference with Amanda, West grudgingly accepted. Judge Watson reviewed the settlement agreement and, finding it acceptable, made it the official ruling of the court. As we prepared to leave, Amanda approached me, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "You set me up," she accused. "You made me think you were helpless." I looked at the woman I had once loved, with all my heart now a stranger. "No, Amanda. You set yourself up when you chose to betray everything we built together." Alexander stepped between us. "This conversation is over. Any further communication needs to go through me." His tone left no room for argument. As we walked down the courthouse steps into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, it held possibility rather than dread. In the weeks following the divorce settlement, I gradually reclaimed my life. The house that had felt so empty and tainted began to feel like mine again. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and replaced the mattress. Small changes that helped erase the painful memories. Amanda made one last attempt at reconciliation, showing up unannounced on my doorstep a month after the divorce was finalized. Gregory had ended their relationship once the scandal became known at the company. She had been demoted and was facing social ostracism from the same circle of friends who had previously taken her side. Now she wanted to talk about giving us another chance. I listened quietly to her rehearsed speech about mistakes and forgiveness. When she finished, I simply said, "I forgive you, Amanda. Not for you, but for me. I need to move forward without carrying this anger. But forgiveness does not mean reunion. We cannot go back, and I do not want to. Please respect that this is goodbye." The clarity of that moment stayed with me. I had loved Amanda deeply and genuinely, but that chapter of my life was closed. The pain had transformed me, but it did not define me. More importantly, the divorce crisis had rekindled the most significant relationship in my life. Alexander and I established a weekly dinner tradition alternating between my house and his. I met his wife, Sophia, a warm-hearted pediatrician who welcomed me into their lives without reservation. They had 2 children, a 7-year-old boy named James, and a 4-year-old girl named Elizabeth, who immediately took to calling me Uncle Oakley and demanding piggyback rides. Alexander explained his years of distance during one of our dinners. "I thought you resented my success," he admitted. "Every time we talked, it seemed like you were uncomfortable with my career and lifestyle. I assumed you wanted space from the constant reminder of our different paths." I was intimidated, I confessed, not resentful. I kept comparing myself to you and feeling inadequate. It was easier to pull back than feel like I was always coming up short. "The irony," Alexander said with a sad smile, "is that I always admired your choices. You prioritized balance and personal happiness, while I chased status and wealth. There were so many nights I sat in my empty apartment, working until midnight, wondering if you had the better life after all." These honest conversations healed old wounds. We were different men, with different values and paths, but we were brothers again, supporting rather than comparing. On the professional front, I made some changes too. The divorce had shown me how vulnerable I was by relying solely on my engineering salary. I started a small side business using my technical skills to develop specialized software solutions for local businesses. The additional income gave me security, and the creative challenge reignited my passion for problem solving. New friendships entered my life as well. I joined a local hiking group and met people who valued experiences over possessions. Among them was Claire, a landscape architect with a quick laugh and thoughtful perspective. Our friendship developed slowly into something deeper, but I was careful this time, more aware of my own needs and boundaries. When I introduced Claire to Alexander and his family, my brother pulled me aside afterward. She looks at you the way someone should look at the person they care about, he said simply. Not as a stepping stone or a project, but as a partner. Looking back at the painful journey, I realized how much I had gained by losing what I thought I needed. The divorce that Amanda intended to destroy me instead forced me to rebuild on a stronger foundation. The financial attack that was meant to leave me helpless reconnected me with the one person who could not only protect me legally, but heal a long-standing wound in my heart. Life rarely gives us what we expect. Sometimes it takes away what we thought we wanted to give us what we truly need. The house that Amanda and I fought over now hosts Sunday dinners with Alexander's family filled with laughter and the genuine connection I always longed for. The career I was criticized for has provided the stability to build a life aligned with my values. I learned that true worth is not measured by income or status, but by integrity and the quality of our relationships. I learned that sometimes losing a battle can lead to winning the war, especially when you have the right allies. And most importantly, I learned that family, real family, shows up when it matters most. If you have experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life, share your story in the comments below. Has a difficult ending ever opened the door to a new beginning for you? Hit like. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And share this with someone who might be going through a tough time, right? Now, remember sometimes, what feels like the end is just the painful beginning of something beautiful. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize the hidden blessings in your own challenges.